The consistent circle present this audiobook titled Mindset and Motivation, Growth Mindset, Unlocking the Power of Self-Development. Narrator, Divine Echo. Introduction, the Seed of Potential. Within every person lies a dormant seed of immense potential. It is the seed of who you could become, what you could achieve, and the life you could lead. But a seed, no matter how robust, cannot grow on a rocky path. It requires fertile soil, sunlight, and water. In the garden of your life, the soil is your mindset. It is the foundational belief system that either nurtures your potential or starves it. The sunlight and water are your motivation, the drive, the purpose, and the consistent action that fuels your growth. This book is a guide to cultivating that soil and harnessing that light. It is an exploration of the profound difference between a fixed mindset, which sees our abilities as static and unchangeable, and a growth mindset, which sees challenges as opportunities, effort as the path to mastery, and failure as a stepping stone. Self-development is not a destination. It is a journey of continuous evolution. It is the conscious decision to become a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. And at the very heart of this journey lies a single, powerful choice, the choice to believe in the power of growth. Let us embark on this journey together, to uproot the limiting beliefs that hold us back and plant the seeds for a future of limitless possibility. The garden of the world has no limits, except in your own mind. Rumi. Chapter 1. Two Mindsets, Two Realities. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at a crossroads. One path is wide, well-worn, and appears safe. It's the path most people take. The other is narrow, overgrown in places, and seems to lead into unknown territory. It looks challenging, perhaps even a little frightening. Which path do you choose? This metaphor captures the essence of a decision we make thousands of times throughout our lives, often without even realizing it. It is the choice between two fundamental ways of thinking about ourselves and our potential. Psychologist Carol Dweck, after decades of research into human motivation and achievement, identified these two distinct mental frameworks and gave them names that have since transformed how we understand success, learning, and personal development. The fixed mindset and the growth mindset. These are not merely personality traits or abstract concepts. They are deeply ingrained belief systems that shape every aspect of our existence: how we approach challenges, how we respond to setbacks, how we interpret feedback, and ultimately, how far we go in life. Understanding the difference between these two mindsets is not just an intellectual exercise. It is the foundational step upon which the entire edifice of self-development is built. The fixed mindset, living within invisible walls. To understand the fixed mindset, we must first understand its core belief, the conviction that our basic qualities, our intelligence, our talent, our character, are static, unchangeable traits. People operating from this perspective believe they were born with a certain amount of ability, and that amount is essentially their lot in life. You're either smart or you're not. You're either naturally gifted at music, athletics, or mathematics, or you're not. There is no changing this fundamental reality. This belief system creates a psychological prison with walls that are invisible but nonetheless real. Every situation becomes a test. Every challenge becomes a threat. Why? Because if your abilities are fixed, then any situation that might expose a limitation becomes a potential verdict on your worth as a person. If you attempt something difficult and fail, that failure isn't just information, it's proof. Proof that you aren't smart enough, talented enough, or good enough. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. The student with a fixed mindset approaches a difficult subject with anxiety. She thinks, if I have to work hard to understand this, it means I'm not naturally smart. Smart people just get it. Consequently, she may avoid putting in genuine effort. If she studies minimally and still performs poorly, she can console herself with the thought, well, I didn't really try. If she studies hard and still struggles, the threat is even greater. It might confirm her deepest fear, that she simply doesn't have what it takes. This avoidance of effort is one of the fixed mindset's most tragic consequences. When you believe your abilities are fixed, effort feels like a risky gamble. If you have to work hard at something, it must mean you lack natural ability. And if you lack natural ability, what's the point? This logic, while flawed, is internally consistent within the fixed mindset framework. Better to coast, to play it safe, to stick with what you already know you're good at. In this way, the fixed mindset keeps people confined to a small, comfortable territory, never venturing into the unknown where growth actually happens. The fixed mindset also has a profound effect on how people handle feedback and criticism. If a piece of feedback feels like a judgment on their fixed ability, it is experienced as a personal attack. The person becomes defensive, dismissive, or crushed. They hear not, "Here's how you could improve this presentation," but rather, "You are inadequate." This defensive posture closes the door to learning. Why would you listen to criticism that only confirms your limitations? Perhaps most damaging of all, the fixed mindset fosters a culture of comparison. If your goal is to validate your fixed intelligence or talent, then you need others to serve as benchmarks. You need to be smarter than, more talented than, more successful than those around you. When someone else succeeds, it can feel like your own failure. Their light dims yours. This scarcity mentality breeds insecurity, jealousy, and a constant need for external validation, an exhausting and ultimately unsatisfying way to live. The growth mindset, embracing the power of yet. Now step onto the other path. The growth mindset is built upon a fundamentally different belief. The conviction that your most basic qualities are things you can cultivate through effort, strategy, and help from others. While people may differ in every which way, in their initial talents, aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. This perspective transforms the landscape of human possibility. The word that best captures this transformation is a tiny three-letter word, yet. You may not understand calculus, yet. You may not be a confident public speaker, yet. You may not have built a successful business, yet. This simple addition reframes every limitation as temporary, every shortfall as a point on a trajectory of growth. For the person with a growth mindset, challenges are not threats to be avoided, but opportunities to be embraced. A difficult task is not a potential verdict on their ability, but a chance to stretch, to learn, to become something more than they were before. Where the fixed mindset sees a wall, the growth mindset sees a climbing route. Where the fixed mindset sees a potential fall, the growth mindset sees the chance to build new muscles. Effort takes on an entirely different meaning in this framework. Far from being a sign of inadequacy, effort is recognized as the essential ingredient for mastery. The growth mindset understands that even the most brilliant artists, athletes, and scientists had to practice, struggle, and persevere to reach their heights. Michael Jordan, widely regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time, was cut from his high school varsity team. He didn't interpret this as proof that he lacked talent. He used it as fuel to work harder. He understood that greatness is earned, not given. This embrace of effort extends to how people with a growth mindset view feedback and criticism. If your goal is to learn and grow, then information about how you can improve is invaluable. Constructive criticism is not a personal attack but a gift, a roadmap pointing toward the next step in your development. The growth mindset asks, "What can I learn from this? How can this make me better?" rather than, "What does this say about me?" Two mindsets in action, a tale of two students. Let us return to the example of the two students facing a difficult exam, but let us now explore their inner worlds more deeply. Sarah operates from a fixed mindset. She has always been told she's smart, and she has come to believe that being smart means things should come easily to her. When she sits down to study for her advanced chemistry exam, she feels a knot of anxiety in her stomach. The material is genuinely difficult, and she doesn't understand it right away. This confusion triggers an alarm in her mind. If I were really smart, she thinks, this would make sense. Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought. To protect herself from this painful possibility, she adopts a series of self-defeating strategies. She studies in a superficial way, reading the text without really engaging with it, never asking for help because asking for help would publicly confirm her inadequacy. She secretly hopes the exam will be easy, that she can coast through on her reputation. When she receives her grade, a C, she feels a wave of shame followed by relief. She tells herself, "I didn't really try. If I had tried, I could have done better." This story protects her ego, but ensures she will repeat the same pattern next time, never developing the study skills and resilience she truly needs. Marcus operates from a growth mindset. He also finds the chemistry material difficult. He also feels confused at first, but his internal dialogue sounds completely different. He thinks, "Wow, this is challenging. I'm going to have to really work to understand this." He doesn't interpret his confusion as a verdict on his intelligence, but as a signal about what he needs to do next. He seeks out different study strategies. He forms a study group with classmates. He goes to the professor's office hours. He spends extra time working through problems, not because it's easy, but because he understands that this struggle is precisely what learning feels like. When he gets his exam back, let's say it's also a C, his response is different from Sarah's. He is disappointed, yes, but his primary reaction is curiosity. Okay, he thinks, that approach didn't work as well as I'd hoped. Which specific concepts did I miss? What can I learn from my mistakes? What should I do differently next time? The difference between Sarah and Marcus is not about innate intelligence or ability. It's about their interpretation of the same experience. Sarah sees difficulty as a threat to her identity. Marcus sees difficulty as a natural part of the learning process. Over time, this difference compounds. Marcus keeps learning, keeps growing, keeps expanding his capabilities. Sarah stays safely within her comfort zone, never venturing into the territory where genuine growth occurs. The neuroscience behind the mindsets. What makes the growth mindset so powerful is that it aligns with the fundamental nature of the human brain. We now know, thanks to decades of neuroscience research, that the brain is not a static organ but a dynamic, adaptable system. This quality is called neuroplasticity. Every time you learn something new, your brain physically changes. Neurons fire together and wire together, forming new connections and strengthening existing pathways. When you practice a skill, you are literally building and reinforcing the neural architecture that supports that skill. When you struggle with a difficult problem, your brain is doing the work of forging new connections. The fixed mindset denies this reality. It acts as if the brain were a computer with fixed hardware, when in fact it is more like a garden that can be cultivated, enriched, and expanded over time. Understanding neuroplasticity gives the growth mindset a solid scientific foundation. It's not just positive thinking, it's biology. The stakes, why this matters. You might be wondering at this point whether these mindset differences really matter in the grand scheme of things. Do they affect anything beyond how we feel about exams and challenges? The research says yes, profoundly so. People with a growth mindset achieve more over time because they embrace challenges and persist through obstacles. Have healthier relationships because they believe people can change and grow. Experience less depression and anxiety because they don't interpret setbacks as permanent verdicts on their worth. Take more intelligent risks and innovate more effectively. Recover more quickly from failures and disappointments. Live with a greater sense of agency and possibility. People with a fixed mindset, by contrast, often plateau early and achieve less than their potential. Struggle in relationships because they label people as good or bad, without room for growth. Experience more anxiety because every situation feels like a test. Avoid challenges that could lead to growth. Are more devastated by failure because it feels permanent. Live with a lingering sense of being judged and found wanting. The choice is yours. The most liberating truth about mindsets is that they are not permanent. You are not born with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset as an unchangeable trait. Everyone has a mixture of both, and that mixture can shift over time. With awareness and effort, you can cultivate more of a growth mindset and loosen the grip of the fixed mindset. The first step is simply noticing. Notice when you feel defensive in the face of feedback. Notice when you avoid a challenge because you're afraid of failing. Notice when someone else's success makes you feel threatened rather than inspired. In those moments, you are catching your fixed mindset in action, and catching it is the first step toward choosing differently. You can choose to hear, "You can't do this," and add the word, "yet." You can choose to see effort not as a sign of weakness, but as the path to mastery. You can choose to interpret failure not as a verdict, but as data. These choices, made consistently over time, reshape not only your mindset but your entire reality. The two paths lead to two different lives. One is a life of defending, proving, and protecting, a life lived within invisible walls. The other is a life of exploring, learning, and becoming, a life of expanding possibility. The crossroads is always before you. The choice in every moment is yours. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Henry Ford. The fixed mindset makes you concerned with how you'll be judged. The growth mindset makes you concerned with improving. Carol S. Dweck. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Yet. For centuries, humanity operated under a comforting but limiting assumption about the brain. It was believed that the mind was like a clay pot, fired in the kiln of childhood and early adolescence, after which its shape became permanently fixed. By the time you reached adulthood, the thinking went, your intelligence, your capabilities, your very cognitive architecture were set in stone. You had what you had, and that was that. This belief was not merely an academic curiosity. It reinforced the fixed mindset's darkest premise, that you are stuck with the mental equipment you were given at birth. If you weren't born a genius, well, that was unfortunate, but there was nothing to be done about it. Effort might help you maximize your fixed potential, but it could never expand it. Then came a revolution. It didn't arrive with the clash of armies or the fall of governments, but with the quiet hum of MRI machines and the patient work of neuroscientists peering into the living, thinking brain. What they discovered shattered the old assumptions and provided the growth mindset with its most powerful empirical foundation. They discovered neuroplasticity. This chapter is an invitation to understand that revolution, to grasp not just intellectually, but viscerally, that your brain is not a static organ, but a dynamic, adaptable, and endlessly capable system. The science of neuroplasticity transforms the concept of a growth mindset from a nice philosophy into a biological reality. It proves that the power of yet is not just a motivational slogan. It is a description of how your brain actually works. The living forest, understanding neuroplasticity. Imagine walking through a dense forest. At first, there is no path. You push through underbrush, step over fallen logs, and navigate by instinct. The next time you walk that way, the route is slightly easier. Some brush has been pushed aside. After dozens of trips, a visible path emerges. After hundreds, it becomes a well-worn trail that others can easily follow. Your brain operates on the same principle. It consists of approximately 86 billion neurons, specialized cells that communicate with each other through connections called synapses. When you learn something new, think a thought, or practice a skill, specific neurons fire together. And as the neuroscientist Donald Hebb famously put it, neurons that fire together, wire together. Each time you repeat that thought or action, the connection between those neurons strengthens. The path becomes more established. This is neuroplasticity in action. The word itself combines neuro, referring to neurons, the brain's cells, and plasticity, meaning moldable or changeable. Your brain is literally changing its physical structure based on your experiences, your thoughts, and your behaviors. It is not hardwired like a computer. It is constantly rewiring itself like a living forest, with some paths growing stronger through use while others fade away from neglect. This process happens at every age, in every brain, every single day. When you learn a new word, a new neural connection forms. When you practice a musical instrument, the brain regions controlling your fingers actually expand. When you memorize a route through a city, your hippocampus, the brain's navigation center, grows new tissue. The old model of a static brain is not just incomplete, it is fundamentally wrong. The science of effort, how struggle builds the brain. One of the most liberating implications of neuroplasticity is that it redefines the nature of effort and struggle. From a fixed mindset perspective, struggling with a task is a sign that you've hit the ceiling of your ability. It's evidence that you don't have what it takes. From a neuroscientific perspective, however, struggle is something entirely different. It is the very mechanism of growth. Consider what happens when you tackle something genuinely difficult. Let's say you're learning to play a complex piece on the piano. At first, your movements are awkward and slow. Your fingers feel clumsy. You make mistakes constantly. This experience of struggle is not a sign that you lack musical talent. It is the sensation of your brain building new pathways. Each fumbled note, each corrected finger placement, each moment of focused attention is sending signals to your neurons. We need a stronger connection here. This pathway isn't working. Let's try another. This is why easy learning is often shallow learning. When something comes to you without effort, your brain doesn't need to build new structures. It can rely on existing pathways. But when you struggle, when you push against the edge of your understanding, your brain responds by doing exactly what it evolved to do. It adapts. It grows. It changes. The implications for education, for skill development, and for personal growth are profound. If you understand that struggle is growth, you stop avoiding difficulty and start seeking it out. You stop interpreting confusion as a verdict and start interpreting it as a signal that you're on the verge of learning something new. You embrace what the psychologist Anders Ericsson called deliberate practice, the kind of focused, effortful practice that pushes you just beyond your current capabilities and forces your brain to adapt. Mistakes, the brain's favorite teacher. If struggle is the mechanism of growth, then mistakes are the data that guide it. From a neuroplasticity perspective, a mistake is not a failure. It is a vital piece of feedback that your brain uses to refine its models of the world. Think about how you learned to ride a bicycle. You didn't read a book about it, watch a video, and then execute perfectly on your first try. You got on the bike, wobbled, and fell. You got up, tried again, and fell slightly less. Each fall was a data point. Your brain was processing. Too much lean to the left, too much weight on the handlebars, not enough speed. With each mistake, your brain adjusted its calculations, refined its motor commands, and gradually built the neural circuitry required for balance. This is how all learning works. The brain is essentially a prediction machine. It constantly builds models of how the world works based on past experience, and it uses those models to guide behavior. When your behavior leads to an unexpected outcome, when you make a mistake, your brain receives an error signal. That signal triggers a cascade of neurochemical events designed to update the model. That prediction was wrong, your brain says. Let's adjust. This is why people who are afraid of making mistakes learn more slowly. Their fear prevents them from venturing into territory where mistakes are possible. They stick to what they already know, depriving their brains of the error signals that drive growth. The growth mindset, by contrast, embraces mistakes precisely because it understands their function. Every error is an opportunity to update the model, to refine the prediction, to build a more accurate understanding of reality. The teenage brain, a case study in plasticity. If you want to see neuroplasticity in its most dramatic form, look at the adolescent brain. For decades, the teenage years were viewed with a mixture of frustration and resignation. Teenagers were seen as moody, impulsive, and difficult, and that was just considered normal. But neuroscience has revealed something far more interesting. The adolescent brain is undergoing a period of massive reorganization. During adolescence, the brain prunes away unused neural connections, a process called synaptic pruning, while strengthening the connections that are used most frequently. It's like a sculptor removing excess marble to reveal the statue within. At the same time, the brain is myelinating its most important pathways, wrapping them in a fatty substance that dramatically speeds up neural transmission. This period of heightened plasticity is why teenagers can learn new skills, languages, musical instruments, athletic abilities, with such remarkable speed. But it also explains why the teenage years can be turbulent. The brain's emotional centers are developing rapidly, while the prefrontal cortex, the seat of impulse control and long-term planning, lags behind. It's like having a powerful engine before the brakes are fully installed. Understanding this has profound implications for how we view adolescence. Rather than writing off teenagers as simply difficult, we can recognize that they are in a critical window of brain development. The experiences they have, the skills they practice, the habits they form during these years will shape the neural architecture they carry into adulthood. This is both a challenge and an extraordinary opportunity. You are not stuck. The practical implications. The most important message of neuroplasticity is also the most hopeful. You are not stuck. Whatever story you've been telling yourself about your limitations. Not a math person. I have a bad memory. I'm just not creative. That story is not biologically determined. It is a self-description of your current neural pathways, not a verdict on your future potential. Consider memory. Many people believe they have bad memory as if it were a fixed trait like eye color. But memory is not a thing you have. It is a skill you practice. The brain structures involved in memory, particularly the hippocampus, are highly plastic. London taxi drivers, who must memorize the city's complex network of streets, a feat called the knowledge, have been shown to have larger hippocampi than the general population. Their brains physically grew in response to the demands placed upon them. Consider mathematical ability. The belief that some people are math people and others aren't is one of the most culturally ingrained fixed mindset myths. But research shows that mathematical ability, like all abilities, is developed through practice. The brain's parietal cortex, involved in numerical processing, can be strengthened through deliberate effort. People who struggle with math aren't lacking some essential math gene. They simply haven't built the necessary neural pathways yet. Consider creativity. The romantic myth of the creative genius, struck by sudden inspiration from the muses, has been thoroughly debunked by neuroscience. Creativity is not a mystical gift. It is a cognitive process that involves making novel connections between existing neural networks. And like any cognitive process, it can be practiced, developed, and strengthened. The more you engage in creative thinking, the more your brain builds the pathways that support it. Protecting your plasticity. Use it or lose it. There is, however, an important corollary to you can grow. Use it or lose it. The same plasticity that allows your brain to build new pathways also allows unused pathways to weaken and fade. Synaptic pruning is not limited to adolescence. It continues throughout life, albeit at a slower pace. This is why the growth mindset is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing practice. If you stop challenging yourself, if you settle into comfortable routines and avoid new learning, your brain will respond by pruning away the connections that supported those neglected abilities. The capacity remains. The potential for regrowth is always there, but the specific pathways will weaken. This is also why lifelong learning is not just a nice idea, but a biological imperative. Every time you learn a new skill, explore a new subject, or challenge yourself with a difficult problem, you are sending your brain a message. These pathways are important. Strengthen them, maintain them, keep them ready for use. The brain is the ultimate use-dependent organ. It becomes what you ask it to become. Ask it to solve complex problems, and it builds problem-solving circuitry. Ask it to learn languages, and it strengthens language processing networks. Ask it to sit on the couch watching television. And it optimizes for that too, though perhaps not in ways that serve your growth. The mindset-brain connection. Here is where the neuroscience circles back to where we began. The relationship between mindset and brain is bidirectional. Your mindset shapes your brain, and your brain's structure shapes your mindset. When you adopt a growth mindset, you behave in ways that promote neuroplasticity. You seek challenges. You persist through difficulty. You learn from mistakes. All of these behaviors stimulate the brain to build new connections, strengthen existing pathways, and maintain cognitive vitality. When you operate from a fixed mindset, you do the opposite. You avoid challenges, give up easily, and ignore useful feedback. These behaviors deprive your brain of the stimulation it needs to grow. Over time, the fixed mindset becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Believing you cannot change leads you to act in ways that prevent change, which confirms your original belief. But here is the good news. You can break this cycle at any moment. The understanding that your brain is plastic, that it is capable of change throughout your entire life, gives you permission to adopt a growth mindset with confidence. You are not engaging in wishful thinking. You are aligning your beliefs with the fundamental nature of your own biology. Every time you add the word "yet" to a limitation, I don't understand this yet. I'm not good at this yet. I haven't achieved this yet. You are speaking the language of neuroplasticity. You are acknowledging that your current state is not your permanent state. You are giving yourself permission to grow. And your brain, that magnificent, adaptable, ever-changing organ, is ready to respond. The brain is a far more open system than we ever imagined, and nature has gone very far to help us perceive and take in the world around us. It has given us a brain that survives in a changing world by changing itself. Norman Doidge, author of The Brain That Changes Itself. Everything we do, every thought we have, every experience we have, changes the brain. That's what we mean by plasticity. Dr. Michael Merzenish, often called the father of neuroplasticity. Chapter 3, Redefining Failure. The stepping stone, not the stop sign. There is a word that haunts the human psyche. It lurks in the shadows of every ambitious dream and whispers at the edge of every bold endeavor. It stops people mid-stride, turns them away from opportunities, and keeps them trapped in the safe but suffocating confines of the familiar. That word is failure. For most of human history, and certainly within the framework of the fixed mindset, failure has been assigned a devastating meaning. To fail is to be exposed. To fall short is to be found lacking. A failed attempt is not merely an unsuccessful outcome, it is a verdict on one's identity. The message encoded in failure, according to this view, is simple and brutal. You are not enough. This interpretation of failure is perhaps the single greatest obstacle to human growth and achievement. It creates a paralysis that prevents people from taking the very risks that would lead to their development. It turns life into a perpetual game of defense, where the primary objective is not to win, but to avoid losing. And in doing so, it ensures that the full measure of human potential remains forever unrealized. But what if this entire framework is wrong? What if failure has been misunderstood, mislabeled, and misjudged? What if, instead of being life's stop sign, failure is actually its most powerful stepping stone? This chapter is an invitation to radically reframe your relationship with failure. Drawing on the growth mindset, we will explore how the most successful, accomplished, and fulfilled people in history have not avoided failure. They have embraced it, learned from it, and used it as fuel for their ascent. We will discover that the path to mastery is not a smooth highway of uninterrupted successes, but a rocky trail paved with the stones of setback, each one a necessary part of the journey. The two faces of failure. To understand the transformation we need, we must first distinguish between two fundamentally different kinds of failure. The first is failure as an outcome. This is the simple, factual reality that a particular attempt did not produce the desired result. The business didn't turn a profit. The audition didn't land the part. The relationship didn't work out. This is failure in its most neutral sense, an event, a data point, a piece of information about the gap between intention and result. The second is failure as an identity. This is the story we attach to the outcome. This is where the fixed mindset does its damage. The outcome, I didn't get the job, becomes the identity, I am unemployable. The outcome, my business failed, becomes the identity, I am a failure. The outcome, she rejected me, becomes the identity, I am unlovable. The first kind of failure is temporary and informative. The second kind feels permanent and damning. The first is a snapshot, the second is a life sentence. The growth mindset does not deny the pain of failure as an outcome. Rejection hurts, setbacks sting, losing is never fun. But the growth mindset refuses to make the catastrophic leap from outcome to identity. It insists on keeping the event separate from the self. It says, that attempt didn't work, not I am a failure. It says, I haven't mastered this yet, not I will never master this. This distinction is not semantic gamesmanship. It is the difference between a life of continuous learning and a life of protective stagnation. When failure is just an outcome, you can examine it, learn from it, and try again. When failure becomes identity, the only logical response is to stop trying altogether, to protect yourself from further evidence of your supposed inadequacy. Masters of failure, the hidden truth about success. One of the most persistent myths in our culture is the myth of the overnight success. We see the finished product, the celebrated novel, the groundbreaking invention, the championship season, and we imagine it sprang fully formed from the mind of a genius. We rarely see the years of struggle, the countless rejections, the failed experiments that preceded the triumph. Consider these stories. Thomas Edison conducted more than 1,000 unsuccessful attempts at inventing the light bulb before finally succeeding. When a reporter asked him how it felt to fail 1,000 times, Edison replied with the clarity of a growth mindset. I have not failed 1,000 times. I have successfully discovered 1,000 ways that do not work. For Edison, each failure was not a verdict but a victory of elimination. One less path to wander down, one step closer to the solution. J.K. Rowling was a divorced single mother living on welfare when she wrote the first Harry Potter novel. The manuscript was rejected by 12 publishers before a small London house finally agreed to publish it, and only because the publisher's 8-year-old daughter begged her father to read the first chapter. Today, the Harry Potter series has sold over 500 million copies worldwide. Those 12 rejections were not verdicts on Rowling's talent. They were simply steps on the path to finding the right publisher. Stephen King received 30 rejections for his first novel, Carrie. He threw the manuscript in the trash, convinced it would never sell. His wife fished it out and encouraged him to submit it one more time. That submission led to a $2,500 advance, modest at the time, and launched one of the most successful careers in literary history. The 30 rejections were not evidence that King couldn't write. They were simply part of the process. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school varsity basketball team. Think about that for a moment. The man widely considered the greatest basketball player of all time was told by his coach that he wasn't good enough for the team. Jordan later reflected, I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions, I have been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. These stories share a common thread. In each case, the individual refused to let failure define them. They experienced the same pain, the same disappointment, the same doubt that anyone would feel. But they did not make the catastrophic leap from outcome to identity. They kept the failure external, examined it for lessons, and used it to fuel their next attempt. The anatomy of learning from failure. If failure is to become a stepping stone rather than a stop sign, we need a systematic approach to extracting its lessons. The growth mindset does not simply mean try again in a mindless, repetitive way. It means trying again, but differently, applying the wisdom gained from the previous attempt. Here is a practical framework for learning from failure. Step 1. Separate self from situation. When failure occurs, the first and most crucial step is to resist the identity narrative. Say to yourself, explicitly if necessary, this outcome does not define me. I am a person who took an action that led to an undesired result. The action may have been flawed, but I am not flawed. This separation creates the psychological safety needed to examine the failure honestly. Step 2. Conduct a compassionate autopsy. Once you have created some distance between your identity and the event, you can examine the failure with curiosity rather than shame. Ask yourself, what was my intention? What actually happened? Where did the gap occur? What factors were within my control? What factors were outside my control? What assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? Step 3. Extract the lessons. Every failure contains at least one lesson, often more. The lesson might be about your strategy, your preparation, your timing, your communication, or your understanding of the situation. It might be about your own limitations, not fixed limitations, but current skill gaps that need to be addressed. The key is to find the lesson without turning it into a verdict. I need to improve my public speaking skills is a lesson. I'm just not a good speaker is a verdict. Step 4. Adjust and attempt again. Armed with new information, you can now design a new approach. The goal is not to avoid failure entirely. That's impossible. But to fail better next time. To make new mistakes rather than repeating the old ones. Each iteration brings you closer to mastery. The courage to fail. There is a reason so many people choose the safety of the familiar over the risk of the unknown. Failing hurts. It hurts our pride, our self-image, our sense of competence. It exposes us to judgment from others and more painfully from ourselves. But here is the paradox that the growth mindset reveals. The pain of failure is temporary, but the pain of never trying, of always wondering, what if, is permanent. The regret of inaction haunts far more people than the regret of honest failure. Consider the research on regret. When people near the end of their lives are asked about their biggest regrets, they rarely mention things they tried and failed at. Instead, they mention the chances they didn't take, the dreams they didn't pursue, the risks they avoided. As the writer Bronnie Ware documented in her work with palliative care patients, one of the most common regrets is this: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. The courage to fail is really the courage to live fully. It is the willingness to risk disappointment for the chance of achievement. It is the understanding that a life spent avoiding failure is a life spent avoiding life itself. Redefining success. When you redefine failure, you inevitably redefine success as well. In the fixed mindset, success means proving you're smart or talented. It means never failing, never struggling, never being exposed as less than perfect. This definition of success is not only unrealistic, it's deeply limiting. It keeps you confined to what you already know you can do. In the growth mindset, success means stretching yourself to learn something new. It means developing yourself, even if that development comes with temporary setbacks. It means becoming more than you were before. By this definition, you can succeed even when you fail, as long as you learn and grow from the experience. The most successful people in any field are not those who have never failed. They are those who have failed the most because they have tried the most. They have accumulated more data, more lessons, more experience. They have built more neural pathways through more attempts. Their failures have not held them back, they have propelled them forward. The choice is yours. You can see failure as a stop sign, a signal to turn back, give up, and protect yourself. Or you can see it as a stepping stone, a place to gain your footing for the next leap forward. One choice leads to a shrinking world of diminishing possibility. The other leads to an expanding universe of continuous growth. Failure is the condiment that gives success its flavor. Truman Capote. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill. Our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Confucius. Chapter 4, The Fuel for the Journey, Finding Your Why. Imagine two people pushing against a massive boulder. They are using the same amount of physical effort. Their muscles strain equally. Their breathing is equally labored. And yet, one of them will give up after an hour, while the other will persist for an entire day. What explains the difference? It is not the effort itself. It is the reason behind the effort. It is the why. The growth mindset provides the belief that you can change. Neuroplasticity provides the biological mechanism for that change. A healthy relationship with failure provides the resilience to keep going when things get hard. But none of these elements can sustain you on a long journey without the one essential ingredient that transforms effort from a burden into a calling: purpose. This chapter is about finding your why, the deep, compelling reason that fuels your journey of self-development. It is about understanding that motivation is not a mysterious force that either blesses you or passes you by, but a natural byproduct of clarity. When you know why you're doing what you're doing, the motivation to act is not something you have to manufacture. It flows naturally from the meaning you've attached to your goals. The 2 layers of motivation. To understand the power of why, we must first distinguish between 2 layers of motivation that operate in every human endeavor. The first layer is external motivation. This is the motivation that comes from outside yourself. It includes rewards like money, praise, recognition, and status. It also includes punishments like criticism, rejection, and failure. External motivation is real and can be powerful for a time, but it has a critical flaw. It is unsustainable. When the reward disappears or the punishment loses its sting, the motivation evaporates. You're left with no reason to continue. The second layer is internal motivation. This is the motivation that comes from within. It includes values like meaning, purpose, curiosity, and growth. It is the satisfaction of mastering a skill, the joy of expressing your authentic self, the fulfillment of contributing to something larger than yourself. Internal motivation is not dependent on external circumstances. It can sustain you through the longest, hardest journeys because it is rooted in who you are and what you deeply care about. The fixed mindset tends to rely heavily on external motivation. It is concerned with proving itself, with looking smart, with winning approval. These are all things that depend on the reactions of others, reactions that are unpredictable and ultimately beyond your control. When you rely on external motivation, you place your fate in the hands of the world. The growth mindset, by contrast, cultivates internal motivation. It is concerned with learning, with developing, with becoming more than you were before. These are things that depend only on you. When your motivation is internal, you become the author of your own journey. The power of purpose. Research in psychology has consistently shown that people with a strong sense of purpose outperform those without one, not because they are more talented, but because they are more persistent. They show up when others don't. They put in the extra hours. They push through the inevitable plateaus and frustrations. Consider the famous marshmallow test, studies conducted at Stanford University in the 1960s and 1970s. 4-year-old children were given a choice. They could eat one marshmallow immediately, or they could wait 15 minutes and receive 2 marshmallows. The researchers then followed these children into adolescence and adulthood. They found that the children who were able to delay gratification, who could keep their eyes on the future reward, achieved higher SAT scores, lower levels of substance abuse, better responses to stress, and higher social competence as adolescents. But here's what's often missed in popular discussions of this research. The ability to delay gratification is not just a matter of willpower. It depends on whether the future reward feels real and meaningful. Children who could imagine the 2 marshmallows, who could connect their present waiting to a future payoff, found it easier to wait. Children for whom the future reward was abstract and unreal ate the marshmallow immediately. Your why is the 2 marshmallows. It is the future reward that makes present sacrifice meaningful. When your purpose is clear and compelling, the effort required to achieve it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like an investment. You're not losing something by working hard. You're gaining something by moving closer to what matters most. Finding your why, a process of discovery. Finding your why is not always easy. It requires introspection, honesty, and sometimes a willingness to question assumptions you've held for years. But it is a journey worth taking, because the clarity it provides will fuel every other step of your development. Here is a process for discovering your deeper purpose. Step 1, start with your values. Your why is always connected to what you value most deeply. Take some time to identify your core values. What matters most to you in life? Is it family, creativity, contribution, freedom, mastery, justice, connection? Make a list of your top 5 values and be honest, not about what you think should matter, but about what actually matters to you. Step 2, connect values to goals. Now look at the goals you're pursuing or the goals you'd like to pursue. How do they connect to your values? If you're trying to start a business, is it because you value autonomy, creativity, impact on others? If you're trying to get in shape, is it because you value health, vitality, self-respect? The more directly your goals serve your values, the more powerful your motivation will be. Step 3, ask the 5 whys. This is a technique borrowed from business problem solving, but it works just as well for personal discovery. Start with a goal and ask why you want to achieve it. Then ask why again for each answer, continuing until you reach a fundamental value. For example, goal, I want to start a business. Why? Because I want to be my own boss. Why? Because I want control over my time. Why? Because I want to be present for my children as they grow up. Why? Because family is the most important thing to me. Why? Because I believe that being a good parent is my highest calling. Now you've moved from a surface goal, starting a business, to a profound purpose, being present for your children, fulfilling your highest calling as a parent. That purpose will sustain you through the countless challenges of entrepreneurship in a way that being my own boss never could. Step 4, visualize the outcome and the absence. A powerful way to connect with your why is to vividly imagine 2 futures. First, imagine achieving your goal. What does it feel like? Who is with you? What are you doing? How has your life changed? Make the image as detailed and sensory as possible. Then imagine the opposite, a future where you never pursued this goal. What does that feel like? What opportunities have you missed? What regret do you carry? The contrast between these two futures can be a powerful motivator. The why is your North Star. Once you've identified your deeper purpose, it becomes a North Star, a fixed point of reference that guides your decisions and sustains your motivation through changing circumstances. When you face a difficult choice, you can ask, which option aligns with my why? This question cuts through confusion and helps you make decisions that are true to yourself. When you feel like giving up, you can return to your why. This is hard, but it matters because. The reason doesn't erase the difficulty, but it makes the difficulty meaningful. And meaningful difficulty is bearable. Meaningless difficulty is not. When you achieve a goal, your why gives you perspective. It helps you appreciate the accomplishment without becoming attached to it. You understand that the goal was never the ultimate point. It was an expression of something deeper. And because your why remains even after the goal is achieved, you're never left with the empty feeling that often follows major accomplishments. The relationship between why and what. It's important to understand that your why and your what work together. Your why provides the direction and the fuel. Your what provides the roadmap and the milestones. Some people make the mistake of focusing only on the what. They set goals, make plans, track progress, but they never connect their actions to a deeper purpose. When the going gets tough, they have no reason to persist. The what alone is not enough to sustain motivation through difficulty. Other people make the opposite mistake. They focus only on the why. They have beautiful visions and noble purposes, but they never translate them into concrete goals and actions. Their inspiration remains just that, inspiration, never manifesting in the world. The growth mindset integrates both. It holds the why as a constant source of meaning and motivation, while using the what to create structure and momentum. The why without the what is dreaminess. The what without the why is drudgery. Together, they are unstoppable. When your why changes. One final note, your why is not necessarily permanent. As you grow and develop, your values may shift. What mattered deeply to you at 20 may matter less at 40. This is not a failure of purpose, it is a sign of evolution. The key is to stay connected to your purpose at each stage of life. When you feel your motivation flagging, it may be a signal that your old why no longer fits. Instead of pushing through with sheer willpower, take time to reconnect with what truly matters to you now. Your purpose may have evolved, and your goals need to evolve with it. The growth mindset embraces this evolution. It understands that you are not the same person you were 5 years ago, and you won't be the same person 5 years from now. Your why can grow and change along with you. The fuel that never runs out. External motivation is like gasoline. It burns bright but fast, and it constantly needs to be replenished. Internal motivation, rooted in purpose, is like the sun, a constant source of energy that doesn't deplete with use. When you find your why, you tap into an inexhaustible fuel source. You no longer need to manufacture motivation through sheer will. You no longer depend on praise, rewards, or recognition to keep going. Your motivation comes from within, and it is available to you every single day. This is not to say that you'll never have difficult days. You will. There will be mornings when you don't feel like getting up, afternoons when the work feels impossible, evenings when doubt creeps in. But on those days, your why is there to remind you. It whispers, "This matters, keep going." And because you know deep in your bones that it's true, you do. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. Friedrich Nietzsche. The two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Mark Twain. When you are inspired by some great purpose, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Patanjali. Chapter 5. The Power of Habit. Consistency over intensity. There is a seductive myth that runs through our culture, the myth of the transformative moment. It whispers that change happens in dramatic bursts, that breakthroughs come in flashes of inspiration. that lives are turned around by single, heroic decisions. We love stories of the person who wakes up one morning, quits their job, and launches a successful business. We admire the individual who has an epiphany, joins a gym, and transforms their body in 3 months. We celebrate the overnight success, the sudden revelation, the moment everything changed. This myth is not entirely false. Transformative moments do occur. Epiphanies are real. Sudden decisions can alter the course of a life. But what the myth leaves out is what happens after the moment. The thousands of small, unglamorous choices that determine whether the transformation is temporary or lasting. The truth about self-development is both simpler and more challenging than the myth suggests. Real, lasting change does not come from intensity. It comes from consistency. It does not come from the heroic sprint. It comes from the patient marathon. It does not come from the single, dramatic gesture. It comes from the accumulation of small, daily actions repeated over time. This is the power of habit, and understanding this power is essential to any genuine journey of growth. The compound effect of small actions. Imagine you are standing at the base of a massive mountain. Your goal is to reach the summit. Now imagine 2 approaches to this challenge. In the first approach, you wait until you feel a surge of inspiration. When it comes, you run toward the mountain as fast as you can, sprinting up the lower slopes until you are completely exhausted. You make it perhaps a quarter of the way up before you collapse. Unable to take another step, you never reach the summit. In the second approach, you commit to taking just 1 step forward each day. Not a sprint, not a heroic effort, just 1 step. Some days you feel like taking 2 steps, and you do. Other days, the step feels heavy and difficult, but you take it anyway. Over time, those single steps accumulate. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and one day you look up and realize you are standing on the summit. This is the compound effect of small actions. A single action, repeated consistently, might seem insignificant in the moment. Writing 1 page a day doesn't feel like much. Doing 10 push-ups a day doesn't feel like progress. Saving $5 a day doesn't feel like wealth building. But over days, weeks, months, and years, these small actions accumulate into results that are almost magical in their magnitude. 1 page a day becomes a 365-page book in a year. 10 push-ups a day becomes 3,650 push-ups in a year, enough to transform your upper body strength. $5 a day becomes nearly $2,000 in a year, and invested wisely, becomes a significant sum over decades. The fixed mindset looks for the big break, the overnight success, the dramatic transformation. It is impatient with small actions because they don't provide immediate validation. The growth mindset understands that the big break, when it comes, is almost always the result of thousands of small, consistent actions that preceded it. The architecture of habits. To harness the power of consistency, we need to understand how habits work. Habits are not random behaviors. They have a predictable structure that, once understood, can be deliberately designed and deployed. Charles Duhigg, in his book The Power of Habit, popularized a simple but powerful framework for understanding habit formation. He called it the habit loop, and it consists of 3 elements. The cue, this is the trigger that initiates the habit. It could be a time of day, like waking up, a location like walking into the kitchen, an emotional state, like feeling stressed, or the completion of another action, like finishing dinner. The cue tells your brain to go into automatic mode and let the habit take over. The routine, this is the behavior itself, the action you take in response to the cue. It could be physical, going for a run, mental, checking social media, or emotional, worrying. The routine is what most people think of when they think of a habit. The reward, this is the benefit you get from the routine. It could be a feeling of accomplishment, a release of endorphins, a sense of connection, or the removal of an unpleasant sensation. The reward is what makes the habit stick. It tells your brain that this loop is worth remembering and repeating. Understanding this loop is crucial because it reveals that habits are not just willpower problems. You can't simply try harder to change a habit. You have to understand the architecture that supports it and redesign that architecture deliberately. If you want to build a new habit, you need to make the cue obvious and unavoidable. Make the routine as easy as possible to start. Make the reward immediate and satisfying. If you want to break an old habit, you need to make the cue invisible or difficult to notice. Make the routine difficult or impossible to execute. Make the reward unsatisfying or attach a negative consequence. Start small. The power of atomic habits. One of the biggest mistakes people make in self-development is trying to change too much too quickly. They decide to transform their entire lives in a single week, exercise daily, eat perfectly, meditate for an hour, write for 2 hours, learn a new language, and read a book a week. This approach almost always fails, not because the person lacks willpower, but because they've created a system that is impossible to sustain. The more effective approach is to start absurdly small. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, popularized the concept of 2-minute rules and habit stacking. The idea is to make the new habit so easy that you can't say no. Want to start exercising? Don't commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to putting on your running shoes and stepping outside. That's it. Once you're outside, you'll probably go for a walk or a run, but the commitment is just the first 2 minutes. Want to start meditating? Don't commit to 20 minutes. Commit to 1 minute of focused breathing. That's all. 1 minute is so easy that you can do it even on your most resistant days. And once you start, you'll often continue for longer. Want to start writing? Don't commit to a chapter. Commit to 1 sentence, just 1. The sentence might lead to a paragraph, and the paragraph might lead to a page, but the commitment is just 1 sentence. This approach works for 2 reasons. First, it lowers the barrier to starting. The hardest part of any habit is often just beginning. By making the beginning trivial, you remove the resistance that keeps you from starting at all. Second, it builds momentum. Once you've taken the first small step, the next step feels easier. Success breeds success. Identity-based habits. There is another layer to habit formation that is even more powerful than the structural approach. It's the layer of identity. Most people approach habit change with an outcome-based mindset. They say, I want to run a marathon, outcome, or I want to lose 20 pounds, outcome. This focus on outcomes is not wrong, but it has a limitation. The outcome is in the future, and it's easy to lose motivation when the future feels far away. A more powerful approach is to focus on identity. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I am becoming a runner. Instead of I want to lose weight, say, I am becoming a healthy person. Instead of I want to write a book, say, I am becoming a writer. This shift might seem subtle, but it is profound. When your habit is tied to your identity, every action becomes a vote for the person you want to become. Each time you run, you're not just burning calories or training for a race, you're reinforcing your identity as a runner. Each time you write a sentence, you're not just making progress on a book, you're reinforcing your identity as a writer. The fixed mindset is concerned with proving your existing identity. It asks, am I a runner? And looks for evidence. The growth mindset is concerned with building your future identity. It asks, what kind of person am I becoming? And takes the next small action to move in that direction. The rhythm of consistency. Consistency does not mean perfection. This is a crucial distinction that many people miss. They believe that if they miss a day, they've broken the streak, failed the habit, and might as well give up. This all-or-nothing thinking is a trap. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to be consistent over time. Missing 1 day is not a failure, it's a data point. The real failure is missing 2 days in a row, because that's when the habit starts to weaken and the identity starts to fade. This is why the rule never miss twice is so powerful. If you miss a workout, that's okay. Life happens, but don't miss the next one. If you skip your writing session, that's fine, but show up the next day. A single break doesn't break the habit. A second break starts a new, unwanted habit of quitting. Consistency also means accepting that progress is not linear. There will be days when you feel unstoppable, and days when every step is a struggle. There will be weeks of rapid progress followed by weeks of frustrating plateau. The growth mindset understands this and keeps showing up anyway. trusting that the small actions, accumulated over time, will produce the desired result. Environment design. One of the most effective ways to support consistency is to design your environment for success. Willpower is a limited resource, and relying on it to overcome environmental obstacles is a losing strategy. Instead, arrange your environment so that good habits are easy and bad habits are hard. Want to eat healthier? Don't rely on willpower to resist junk food. Simply don't buy it. Keep healthy snacks visible and accessible. Make the unhealthy options invisible and difficult to obtain. Want to read more? Put books everywhere, on your nightstand, on your coffee table, in your bag. Remove the friction between you and the habit. Make it easier to read than to scroll through your phone. Want to exercise in the morning? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Put your running shoes by the door. Make the first step of the habit so easy that you can do it without thinking. The growth mindset understands that we are not just products of our willpower, we are products of our environments. By designing environments that support our goals, we make consistency not just possible, but inevitable. The accumulation of days. There is something almost mystical about the accumulation of days. A single day of effort changes nothing. A week of effort is barely noticeable. A month of effort shows the first glimmers of change. But a year of effort transforms you. A decade of effort makes you unrecognizable from where you started. This is the power of habit. It is the power of showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it. It is the power of small actions, repeated consistently, until they become automatic. It is the power of patience, trusting that the compound effect of daily effort will eventually produce results that seem impossible from the perspective of any single day. The fixed mindset wants results now. It wants the trophy without the training, the book without the writing, the transformation without the work. The growth mindset understands that real results take time. It embraces the slow, patient accumulation of days, trusting that each small step is bringing it closer to the summit. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. Will Durant, paraphrasing Aristotle. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. James Clear. The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. Warren Buffett. Motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. Jim Ryan. Chapter 6. Navigating the noise. Feedback, criticism, and comparison. No journey of self-development occurs in a vacuum. You do not grow in isolation, undisturbed by the opinions and judgments of others. From the moment you step onto the path of growth, you will encounter the voices of the world, some encouraging, some discouraging, some confusing. Learning to navigate this noise is not optional, it is essential. The external world has a way of penetrating our internal sanctuary. A careless comment from a colleague can echo in your mind for days. A piece of well-intentioned feedback can feel like a personal attack. The carefully curated highlight reels of social media can leave you feeling inadequate and behind. These experiences are not merely unpleasant. They can actively derail your growth if you do not know how to handle them. This chapter is about developing the skills to navigate the noise. It is about learning to receive feedback without being crushed by it, to handle criticism without becoming defensive, and to observe others' success without descending into destructive comparison. In a world that constantly bombards us with messages about who we should be and how we should measure up, these skills are not just useful. They are survival mechanisms for the growth-oriented soul. Feedback, the gift wrapped in sandpaper. From a fixed mindset perspective, feedback feels like a verdict. When someone offers an observation about your performance, you hear it as a judgment on your worth. This presentation could be clearer, translates to you are unclear. Your argument needs more evidence, translates to you are illogical. This draft needs work, translates to you are a bad writer. This interpretation turns feedback into a threat, triggering defensiveness, denial, or despair. From a growth mindset perspective, feedback is something entirely different. It is data. It is information from the external world that can help you improve. It is not a judgment on your fixed worth, but a reflection on your current performance. And current performance is always subject to change. The growth mindset asks different questions when receiving feedback. What can I learn from this observation? Is there truth here that could help me grow? What specific action could I take based on this information? These questions transform feedback from a threat into an opportunity. They allow you to extract value from even poorly delivered criticism. They keep you in a learning posture rather than a defensive one. Of course, not all feedback is created equal. Some feedback is constructive, specific, and offered with genuine desire to help. Other feedback is destructive, vague, and offered with the intent to harm or diminish. The growth mindset learns to distinguish between these. Constructive feedback is specific, actionable, and focused on behavior rather than identity. It says, when you spoke quickly in that meeting, some people had trouble following your points. Slowing down might help your message land more effectively. It points to something you can do differently. Destructive feedback is vague, personal, and focused on identity rather than behavior. It says, you're just not a good communicator. It offers no path forward, only a label to wear. The growth mindset learns to mine constructive feedback for its gold and to discard destructive feedback without internalizing it. It says, thank you for sharing that perspective to the destructive critic, and then moves on, leaving the criticism with the critic rather than carrying it as a burden. Criticism, understanding the source. Harsh criticism, the kind that feels personal, cutting, and unfair, presents a special challenge. It can wound deeply, even when you know intellectually that it shouldn't. Understanding the psychology of the critic can help you take criticism less personally. People who habitually offer harsh, personal criticism are often operating from their own fixed mindset. They feel threatened by your growth because it highlights their own stagnation. Your willingness to try, to risk failure, to put yourself out there, these things expose their own fear of doing the same. Their criticism is often less about you and more about their own insecurity. As the writer and researcher Brené Brown has observed, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. She's referring to the idea that the only criticism worth taking seriously comes from people who are also willing to take risks, to be vulnerable, to put themselves on the line. The criticism of those who sit safely in the stands, never risking failure themselves, can be acknowledged and then released. This doesn't mean all criticism from non-participants is worthless. Sometimes an outside perspective can see things you cannot, but it does mean that the emotional weight of criticism should be calibrated to the source. A harsh word from someone who has never attempted what you're attempting should not carry the same weight as thoughtful feedback from someone who has walked the path you're walking. When you receive harsh criticism, try asking, what is this person's relationship to the work I'm doing? Are they speaking from experience or from assumption? Is this about helping me grow or about making themselves feel better? The answers to these questions will help you decide how much energy to give the criticism and whether to give it any at all. Comparison, the thief of joy. If feedback and criticism come from others, comparison is the noise we generate ourselves. And in the age of social media, this particular form of noise has become a constant, destructive force in modern life. We scroll through feeds filled with carefully curated highlights. The vacation photos, the career achievements, the happy relationships, the fitness transformations. We compare our messy, complicated, behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's polished, edited highlight reel. And we come up short, every time. The result is a pervasive sense of inadequacy. We feel behind, less than, not enough. We measure our chapter 1 against someone else's chapter 20 and conclude that we're failing. We forget that we are seeing only what they choose to show, not the full truth of their journey. The growth mindset offers a powerful antidote to the poison of comparison. Compare yourself to yourself. Your only true competition is the person you were yesterday. The only meaningful measure of progress is whether you are growing, learning, and becoming more than you were before. Someone else's success does not diminish your own. Their light does not make yours darker. There is no scarcity of achievement, no limited supply of greatness. This shift from external comparison to internal progression is liberating. It takes your eyes off others and puts them on your own path. It transforms envy into inspiration. When you see someone achieving something remarkable, you can ask, "What can I learn from their journey?" rather than, "Why am I not there yet?" The art of selective attention. Navigating the noise ultimately comes down to a single skill: the art of selective attention. You cannot control what the world sends your way. You cannot stop people from offering unsolicited feedback, harsh criticism, or carefully curated comparisons. But you can control what you pay attention to, what you internalize, and what you let go. This is not about building walls so high that nothing gets in. That approach leads to isolation and stagnation. It is about developing filters, discernment about what deserves your energy and what does not. Think of yourself as the gatekeeper of your own mind. At the gate, there is a constant stream of visitors: feedback, criticism, praise, comparison, advice, judgment. Some of these visitors have something valuable to offer. Others do not. Your job as gatekeeper is to evaluate each visitor before granting them entry. The questions to ask at the gate: does this visitor have something that will help me grow? Is this visitor speaking truth, even if it's uncomfortable? Is this visitor coming from a place of genuine care or from their own insecurity? Will letting this visitor serve my journey or derail it? Visitors who pass the test are welcomed, heard, and integrated. Visitors who do not are thanked for their visit and shown the door. They do not take up residence in your mind. They do not become the voices you hear when you're trying to sleep or the doubts that surface when you're attempting something hard. The company you keep. One of the most practical ways to navigate the noise is to be intentional about the company you keep. The people closest to you have an outsized influence on your mindset, your motivation, and your self-perception. Seek out people who embody the growth mindset. Surround yourself with those who celebrate your successes without jealousy. Offer honest, constructive feedback when you ask for it. Encourage you to take risks and support you when you fail. Are on their own growth journeys, modeling what continuous development looks like. Remind you of your why when you lose sight of it. Limit your exposure to people who dismiss your goals as unrealistic or foolish. Respond to your successes with envy or resentment. Offer only criticism, never encouragement. Are stuck in their own fixed mindset, projecting their limitations onto you. Make everything about comparison and competition. This doesn't mean cutting people out of your life arbitrarily. It means being aware of the influence others have on you and making conscious choices about how much access they have to your inner world. The inner voice. Finally, the most important voice to navigate is the one that comes from within. The fixed mindset's inner critic is often harsher than any external critic could be. It whispers, "You're not good enough. You don't belong here. Everyone else has it figured out. You're going to fail and everyone will see." This inner voice is not going to disappear entirely. It is a product of years of conditioning, of old messages internalized, of fears and insecurities accumulated over a lifetime. But you can learn to relate to it differently. Instead of believing everything the inner critic says, you can observe it with curiosity. "Ah, there's that voice again. It's telling me I'm not good enough. Interesting. I wonder what triggered it." This stance, observing rather than believing, creates a gap between the voice and your response. In that gap, you have a choice. You can choose to respond with the voice of the growth mindset. "I may not be there yet, but I'm learning. Every expert was once a beginner. My worth is not determined by this moment. I will keep going." The noise will always be there, but you don't have to let it conduct your symphony. The reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. Stephen Furtick. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. Steve Jobs. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. Ken Blanchard. What other people think of me is none of my business. Wayne Dyer. Chapter 7. The Lifelong Journey, Cultivating Your Garden. We have traveled far together on this journey through the landscape of mindset and motivation. We have explored the fundamental choice between two mindsets and the two vastly different realities they create. We have delved into the miraculous plasticity of the brain and discovered that change is not just possible, but biologically built into our very nature. We have learned to redefine failure, transforming it from a stop sign into a stepping stone. We have uncovered the power of purpose, the why that fuels the longest journeys. We have embraced the architecture of habit, understanding that consistency matters more than intensity. And we have developed the skills to navigate the noise of feedback, criticism, and comparison. Now, as we arrive at this final chapter, it is time to step back and see the whole picture. It is time to understand that self-development is not a destination to be reached, but a garden to be cultivated. It is not a problem to be solved, but a process to be embraced. It is not a finite project with an endpoint, but an infinite journey with no final arrival. This understanding is perhaps the most important of all, because if you believe that growth has a finish line, you will be perpetually disappointed. You will achieve one goal only to find that the satisfaction is temporary, that new desires and new challenges have already arisen. You will reach one milestone only to discover that the horizon has shifted, that there is always more to learn, more to become. But if you understand that growth is a lifelong journey, if you embrace the process rather than fixating on the destination, then every day becomes an opportunity. Every challenge becomes an adventure. Every setback becomes a lesson. And the journey itself, with all its twists and turns, its peaks and valleys, becomes the reward. The garden metaphor. Imagine that your life is a garden. This garden does not appear overnight, fully formed and perfectly arranged. It begins as a plot of soil, some of it rich, some of it rocky, some of it tangled with weeds from seasons past. This is your starting point, the raw material with which you begin. Your mindset is the quality of the soil itself. A fixed mindset is like ground that has been compacted, hardened, and depleted. Nothing new can take root there. Seeds of possibility lie on the surface, unable to penetrate. The growth mindset is soil that has been tilled, aerated, and enriched. It is ready to receive seeds and nurture them into full expression. Your motivation is the water and sunlight that fuel growth. Without purpose, without why, the garden withers. But with clear purpose, the garden receives the nourishment it needs to push through the soil, to stretch toward the light, to produce leaves and flowers and fruit. Your habits are the daily practices of gardening. They are the watering, the weeding, the pruning, the fertilizing. These small, consistent actions, repeated day after day, determine whether the garden thrives or merely survives. A single day of intense effort cannot compensate for weeks of neglect, but a few minutes of daily attention can transform even the most unpromising plot into a flourishing paradise. Your relationship with failure is your response to the seasons. Every garden experiences drought. Every garden faces pests. Every garden endures storms. The question is not whether these challenges will come, but how you will respond. Will you see a failed crop as evidence that you have no gift for gardening? Or will you see it as information, data about what this particular patch of earth needs to thrive? The noise of the world is the weather of other people's gardens. You see their lush lawns and abundant harvests, and you compare them to your own struggling plot. But you do not see their soil quality, their hours of labor, their own battles with pests and drought. You see only the surface. The wise gardener tends their own plot and lets others tend theirs. Seasons of growth. One of the most important lessons the garden teaches is that growth is not linear. It moves in cycles, in seasons, in rhythms that cannot be rushed. There is a season of planting, when seeds go into the ground and you wait, sometimes for weeks, seeing nothing. This is the season of faith, of trusting that beneath the surface, unseen work is happening. In your life, this is the season when you lay foundations, when you establish habits, when you do the work without yet seeing the results. It requires patience and trust. There is a season of rapid growth, when the garden seems to explode overnight. Shoots appear, leaves unfurl, flowers burst into bloom. This is the season of visible progress, of momentum, of breakthroughs. In your life, this is when your efforts suddenly bear fruit, when skills click into place, when opportunities arise. It is exhilarating, but it cannot be forced. It arrives in its own time. There is a season of maintenance, when the garden requires steady, consistent care. Weeding, watering, pruning, the daily tasks that keep the garden healthy. This is the season of showing up, of doing the work even when it feels routine, of maintaining what has been built. It lacks the excitement of rapid growth, but is just as essential. There is a season of harvest when you gather the fruits of your labor. This is the season of celebration, of enjoyment, of sharing with others. In your life, this is when you achieve goals, when you reach milestones, when you can pause and appreciate how far you've come. And there is a season of fallow when the garden rests. The soil lies empty, gathering strength for the next cycle. This is the season of rest, of reflection, of integration. In a culture that glorifies constant productivity, this season is often neglected. But without it, the soil becomes depleted and future growth is stunted. Rest is not laziness, it is preparation. The growth mindset honors all these seasons. It does not demand constant, rapid growth. It does not panic during the fallow times. It understands that each season has its purpose and that the full cycle is necessary for long-term flourishing. The perennial nature of growth. A perennial plant returns year after year. It dies back in the winter, disappearing from view, but its roots remain alive beneath the frozen ground. When spring arrives, it sends up new shoots, often stronger and more abundant than before. Your growth is perennial in the same way. There will be winters in your life, times when progress seems to stop, when you lose motivation, when old patterns reassert themselves. The fixed mindset sees these winters as failure, as proof that growth was never real. The growth mindset understands that winters are natural. The roots are still there. The potential is still alive. Spring will come again. This is why the growth mindset is not about never falling. It is about always getting back up. It is not about perfect consistency. It is about returning to the path after every detour. It is not about never doubting. It is about continuing despite the doubt. The perennial nature of growth means that you cannot finish self-development. You cannot arrive at a point where you are done, where no further growth is needed or possible. As long as you are alive, you are capable of growth. And as long as you are capable of growth, the journey continues. This is not a burden. It is a gift. It means that life never loses its potential for freshness, for discovery, for becoming. It means that every day brings a new opportunity to learn, to stretch, to expand. It means that you are never stuck, never finished, never limited to who you have been. The weeds that always return. Any experienced gardener will tell you that weeds never disappear permanently. You can pull them out by the roots, clear the entire bed, and feel a sense of accomplishment. But within weeks, new weeds will appear. Seeds carried by the wind, dormant roots awakening, new invaders finding their way into your carefully tended space. The same is true of the fixed mindset. No matter how thoroughly you cultivate a growth mindset, those old patterns will return. You will catch yourself thinking in fixed ways. You will feel the sting of comparison, the defensiveness in response to feedback, the fear of failure. This does not mean you have failed. It means you are human. The key is not to eliminate the fixed mindset entirely, an impossible goal, but to recognize it when it appears and respond with compassion rather than judgment. There's that old pattern again. I know this feeling. I don't have to act on it. I can choose a different response. This compassionate awareness is the ongoing work of the growth mindset. It is not a one-time achievement, but a continuous practice. Every day, you will have opportunities to choose the growth perspective over the fixed one. Every day, you will have chances to respond to challenges with curiosity rather than fear. Every day, you will decide, through small choices, which mindset will guide your life. The garden you leave behind. There is one more aspect of the garden metaphor that deserves attention. A garden is not just for the gardener. It produces beauty and food and shelter for others. It contributes to the larger ecosystem. It leaves the world more abundant than it found it. Your growth journey is the same. As you develop yourself, you inevitably affect everyone around you. Your children see what it means to embrace challenges and learn from failure. Your colleagues witness what it looks like to receive feedback with openness rather than defensiveness. Your friends experience what it feels like to be around someone who is growing, learning, becoming. You become a model of what's possible. You show others that change is real, that growth is attainable, that the fixed limitations they've accepted for themselves are not as fixed as they seem. Without saying a word, your life becomes an argument for the growth mindset. And perhaps, in some small way, you make it easier for those who come after you. You clear a little of the path. You demonstrate that the journey is worthwhile. You plant seeds in the garden of human potential that will continue to bear fruit long after you're gone. The journey is the reward. There is a tendency in human thinking to focus on destinations. We imagine that happiness lies just beyond the next achievement, that fulfillment waits at the end of the next goal. When I get that promotion, then I'll be happy. When I lose the weight, then I'll feel good about myself. When I master this skill, then I'll have arrived. But the growth mindset reveals a different truth. The journey itself is the reward. The person you become in pursuit of your goals matters more than the goals themselves. The struggles that shape you, the failures that teach you, the small daily victories that accumulate into transformation, these are not just means to an end. They are the end. They are the life you're living. When you reach a goal, the satisfaction is real but temporary. What remains is the person you have become through the reaching. And that person is not finished. That person has new goals, new challenges, new horizons. The journey continues. This is the final wisdom of the growth mindset. There is no arrival. There is only the endless, beautiful process of becoming. And once you truly understand this, you stop waiting for some future moment when you will finally be enough. You realize that you are enough right now, and also capable of becoming so much more. A final invitation. As this book draws to a close, I offer you a final invitation. It is not an invitation to reach a destination, to achieve a specific goal, to become a particular version of yourself. It is an invitation to the journey itself. I invite you to wake up tomorrow and ask, what can I learn today? What challenge can I embrace? What small step can I take toward becoming more than I was yesterday? I invite you to notice when the fixed mindset whispers its doubts, and to respond not with judgment but with curiosity. Interesting. Where did that thought come from? What would the growth mindset say instead? I invite you to redefine failure not as a verdict but as data, not as a stop sign but as a stepping stone. I invite you to find your why and let it fuel you through the hard days. I invite you to build habits so small they cannot fail, and to trust that their accumulation will transform you. I invite you to navigate the noise of the world with discernment, taking what is useful, releasing what is not, and comparing yourself only to who you were yesterday. And I invite you to see your life as a garden, to be tended with patience and care through all its seasons. The soil is ready. The seeds are in your hands. The choice of what to plant, where to plant it, and how to tend it is yours alone. The journey of self-development is the journey of a lifetime. It has no finish line, no final destination, no point of arrival. It is simply the ongoing adventure of becoming more fully yourself. May you travel it with courage, with curiosity, and with the unwavering belief that you are capable of more than you can currently imagine. The power of yet is always with you. The garden of your potential is waiting. Go forth and cultivate it. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Annie's Nin. What we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. T.S. Eliot. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Soren Kierkegaard. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth, dwelling deeply in the present moment and feeling truly alive. Thich Nhat Hanh. Thank you for reading. May your journey of growth be lifelong, your mindset ever expanding, and your motivation always rooted in the deepest purposes of your heart. The end is where we start from.